Welcome to Beyond the Call, where history, leadership, and heroism come alive. Today's story explores Private Dale Merlin Hansen at Hill 60 on Okinawa in 1945, a powerful account of courage and responsibility in combat. If you enjoy learning more about military history and extraordinary individuals, you can find more articles, podcasts, and resources at trackpads.com. Before we continue, I want to mention the Medal of Honor book series that accompanies this work. These books tell the stories of America's Medal of Honor recipients in a serious, readable, and historically grounded format, with each volume focused on a specific campaign, battle, or part of the war. They are available in color paperback, Kindle ebook, and matching audiobook editions. You can find them at militaryauthor.me. The slopes of Hill 60 were a world of shattered rock, torn earth, and drifting smoke. In early May 1945, Marines of Company E moved up that ridge under relentless fire, each step forward answered by bursts from hidden machine guns and sudden mortar strikes. The hill overlooked key approaches in the southern part of Okinawa, and enemy forces had turned it into a fortified knot of pillboxes and caves. Every attempt to advance left men pinned behind shallow cover, unable to climb higher and unable to fall back without abandoning wounded comrades. The attack was losing momentum. Private Dale Hansen lay among them, pressed into the gritty soil as bullets cracked overhead and fragments of coral pattered down around him. Somewhere above his position, a concrete pillbox commanded the slope, its gun firing whenever a helmet or shoulder appeared in its field of view. Beside him lay a rocket launcher, a new and awkward weapon that many Marines still distrusted, but that could punch a hole in heavy defenses. To use it, he would have to crawl into the open, across ground already swept with fire. It was a deadly choice. He made it anyway. Hansen began to inch up the hillside alone, dragging the long tube and its ammunition through dust and debris. Enemy gunners spotted movement and raked his path, bullets chewing into the rocks and soil around him as he searched for any fold in the terrain that might hide him for a moment. When he finally found a small rise that offered a narrow view of the pillbox, he braced the launcher, steadied his aim, and fired. The rocket struck home, blowing apart the strongpoint that had held the company in place. Beyond the Call is the Monday feature of Dispatch, U.S. Military History magazine. The blast silenced the gun, but it did not end the danger. Enemy fire quickly smashed the rocket launcher, leaving Hansen exposed with his main weapon ruined. Instead of dropping back, he grabbed a rifle and pushed onward, determined to keep pressure on the shattered defenses. Reaching the ridge crest, he came suddenly upon a group of enemy soldiers at close range. His first bursts cut down several before the rifle jammed, leaving him with a useless weapon and two attackers rushing toward him. He met them with the butt of the rifle in a brutal hand-to-hand struggle fought over broken stone. After beating back that attack, Hansen did something that shows the deeper nature of his courage. He did not stay on the crest to catch his breath or drift back into the relative safety of the line. He descended the slope again, returned to his comrades, and picked up another weapon and grenades. Then he started back up the hill to continue the assault. This was sustained determination. On that second climb, the air was still thick with dust and the shock of nearby explosions. The ridge remained a maze of firing points and dugouts, and one mortar position in particular continued to drop shells onto the Marines below. Hansen worked his way toward it, using whatever small scraps of cover he could find, closing the distance under fire. When he reached a killing range, he used grenades and rifle fire to destroy the position and kill the crew. With that threat gone, more of the company could move. The battle for Okinawa gave shape and meaning to what he did that day, but his story did not begin on that ridge. Dale Hansen was born in December 1922 in Wisner, a small town in rural Nebraska, and grew up on his family's farm. His early life was marked by long days of chores, caring for animals, and working in the fields, where the rhythm of the seasons demanded steady effort more than words. After finishing high school in 1940, he stayed on the farm, trading classrooms for the practical work of keeping the place running. Those years built quiet habits of endurance and responsibility. When he entered the Marine Corps Reserve in May 1944, he carried that farm strength into uniform. At recruit training in San Diego, he learned drill, discipline, and the basics of infantry combat, then moved to Camp Pendleton for more advanced instruction. There he trained with a Browning automatic rifle, mastering a weapon that demanded control and patience to handle its recoil and weight. His scores marked him as an expert automatic rifleman, the kind of Marine others would rely on when the fighting grew intense. That trust was not given lightly. Later that year, he sailed west as part of a replacement draft, leaving the Nebraska fields for the vastness of the Pacific. He joined Company E of the 1st Marines on Pavuvu, where he took part in field exercises and live-fire training that sharpened the regiment for coming operations. On nearby islands, he and his fellow Marines learned to handle the rocket launcher that would later change the fight on Hill 60, practicing how to move with it over rough ground and how to aim under pressure. These were the unglamorous days of preparation that rarely appear in citations. They mattered just the same. By the time the division landed on Okinawa in 1945, Hansen was part of a seasoned unit entering one of the war's most brutal campaigns. The enemy defense of the island relied on a series of ridges and strongpoints, each designed to slow and bleed attacking forces. Hill 60 was one of those positions, an outpost that had to be taken if the Marines were to push deeper into the southern part of the island. When Company E's advance stalled under its guns, the broader operation hung in the balance at the level of a single slope. In that moment, the choices of one private became central. The official Medal of Honor citation later distilled his actions into the formal phrases reserved for the nation's highest decoration. It spoke of gallantry and intrepidity above and beyond the call of duty, terms that can sound distant until they are mapped back onto the ridge. In plain language, they captured decisions like leaving cover to crawl alone toward a pillbox that had already killed and wounded his comrades. They described returning to the attack even after his primary weapon was destroyed and his life had been threatened at close quarters. Each choice carried a clear risk of death. When the citation credited him with contributing essentially to the success of his company's mission and the capture of a fiercely defended outpost, it recognized the practical results of that courage. By destroying the pillbox and mortar that anchored the defenses, he helped turn Hill 60 from a killing ground into a position the Marines could finally seize. This shifted local firepower and opened a path for further advance. In a campaign where progress was slow and costly, such gains mattered. On that day, the survival of many Marines and the success of the company's assault depended in part on his willingness to act. Hansen's story carries a powerful message about leadership that does not rely on rank. He was a private, not a senior officer, yet he saw what had to be done and accepted that no one might order it. His leadership came from example, moving when others were pinned, taking on the most dangerous tasks without demand for recognition, and returning to the fight even after surviving one brush with death. That is a form of moral courage. It speaks to anyone who has ever faced a moment when stepping forward meant real risk and staying put meant letting others bear the cost. Only a few days after the fighting at Hill 60, Hansen was killed by enemy sniper fire during further operations on Okinawa. He was 22 years old, far from the Nebraska farm where he had grown up, and from the family who had watched him leave. The Medal of Honor recognizing his actions was awarded after his death, presented to those loved ones in his place. For them, the decoration could not replace his presence at the table or in the fields. It did, however, affirm that the country understood what he had done. In the years since, his name has joined the long roll of Marines whose stories are told in training halls, memorial ceremonies, and quiet conversations among veterans. In the Marine Corps, the account of his assault on Hill 60 stands as an example of how individual initiative can change the course of a fight. In his home state, he is remembered as a farm boy who went to war and whose choices on a distant ridge saved lives and helped carry a hard-won battle forward. For all of us who encounter his story today, remembering Private Dale Merlin Hansen means seeing more than a citation or a carved inscription. It means seeing a real man in real danger who chose again and again to move toward the fire so others could live.